want you to bleed for me. Good evening, Flyers fans. Another Flyers episode on tap for you here. I'm Chris Babos alongside Eric Reese. I'm Philly Sports Network's Chris Babos, Eric Reese, Flyers Nation. Eric, how we doing today?
Oh, we're doing fine, man. We're getting in to another what will be a long week of Philadelphia Flyers hockey. Starting with the home and home. And then another weekend back-to-back. So if you want to start getting into it, it's just going to be a lot of heavy lifting from a team who needs to prove that they can lift heavy.
Amen to that. So they say the most wonderful time of the year is December. I would tend to disagree. 4 hockey games in a single week is pretty fantastic. Before we move into next week, though, we have to cover, unfortunately, last week. And last week was not the best week for the Philadelphia Flyers. They end up going 1-3. They sink like a stone to the bottom of the Metropolitan Division. Yes, unfortunately, that's right. 5 games, very early sample size, but 1-3-1 leaves them with just 3 points, sitting behind Columbus and Carolina at the bottom of that Metro. Upcoming, we talked about that schedule, so it's going to be pretty hard for them to really try to climb up those standings at this point with some of the teams that they have to play in: Washington, Minnesota, and even Montreal. So before we hop into the individual recaps, Eric, what was kind of one of your weekly highlights from the Philadelphia Flyers this weekend? What caught your eye? What made you take notice?
There's 3 players that I focused on outside of kind of guys like Michkov, kind of guys like Urson and things like that, away from sort of the power play, because that's what you saw a lot of. You saw a lot of a disjointed play. There was about anywhere between 9 to 11 penalties in this first 4 games combined between Flyers and their opponents. And then when you get into Philadelphia, there is 5 penalties combined. So there's a lot more 5-on-5 time. Focusing on the 5-on-5, that was pretty much my area of, just kind of, I guess, spotlight, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Travis Konechny, Jamie Drysdale, and I know that no one really wants to talk about it right now because he's second on the team in shot attempts and just hasn't put one in the back of the net. But Owen Tippett, there's a lot of inconsistent generating of offense. There's a lot of decent play in the neutral zone. It's unfortunately one of those, we're not seeing enough of it, on a consistent basis. And Tortorella, I think, has said it best at a few times in his press conferences. You're seeing a few good periods and a few good minutes and a few good periods here and there. You have not seen a consistent game from the Philadelphia Flyers, and at no point have they been the dominant team on the ice. However, we should point out here that of all the teams, and they took a tour of the NHL Pacific Division, they're not playing cupcake teams. I know that Edmonton's struggling out of the gate. They still have Draisaitl. They still have McDavid. Vancouver was a tough game each time. Lankinen was stellar in the net each game. Calgary, I don't know if everybody underestimated Calgary. You should know they've always been a hard checking team. And Seattle, I think, is going to be a team that surprises a ton of people. And I was very happy with the way that the Flyers fought back in that Seattle game, but nonetheless just, couldn't get the job done to force an overtime. But that just kind of goes to say, hey, the team has to keep starting hot. And when they do start hot, they have to mitigate the turnovers, the situations where, you know, if the team is possessing the puck in the offensive zone, they have to get back on defense. But a lot of times, you are seeing goaltenders kind of hung out to dry and having to make bigger plays. Unfortunately, that can't be, you know, said for the goaltending tandem as a whole. You're going to see more of those big plays probably made by Urson, while, you know, guys like Fedotov is struggling mightily.
Yeah, absolutely. And touching on the three players that you mentioned, TK still looks stellar on the penalty kill.
Yes.
Still, you know, he has the one shorthanded goal already, and he is probably going to have a chance for, I would say, 8 to 10 more throughout the year. How many he puts away, that's a question, but he's definitely going to have those chances. Jamie Drysdale, we'll touch on. He had a pretty miserable performance over the weekend. But again, that still goes back to what John Tortorella had said, in that he needs a lot of work. So if you see a Jamie Drysdale box score and there's a -1, -2, -3 next to his name, I can't really say that that's a huge surprise, because Tortorella knows what he's working with there. And then Owen Tippett. I feel like listening to Jim Jackson for 20 years, he said it so many times. It's like, he gets one, he's going to have five. And that's kind of how it's going to be for Tippett. Once he gets that first one to hit the back of the net, in the next 5 to 10 games, he's going to end up putting away 5 to 10 goals. He definitely has the talent. He's got the shot. And he definitely, you know, has he's creating the opportunities. We were talking in between, talking during the game, and we were both like, look, I just like the fact that he's firing the puck at the net. So the fact that, yeah, and absolutely HC. Perfect. Absolutely. Nick Sealer should help Drysdale a lot. And that's something that we're actually going to talk on in our second segment here, about the defensive struggles. So very poignant comment, and thank you very much for dropping in the note. So let's take a trip into the time machine. Tuesday, we did our show. We had bold predictions for the Flyers in Edmonton. I had the Flyers winning 5-3. Mr. Eric Race had 4-2 Flyers. Neither one of us were correct. Unfortunately, it was a 4-3 overtime loss. Yours truly did call a Matvei Michkov goal. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We had 2 power play goals in that first period. And dude, how great was that to see as a Flyers? I wouldn't even be a Flyers fan.
Yeah.
As somebody that watches the Flyers consistently, how great was that to see them getting 2 goals in the power play in one period?
Oh, it was fantastic to see, and it's something that was obviously one of the biggest red flags that needed to be addressed in the offseason. It's nice to see Philadelphia, I mean, quite frankly, with the top 15 power play to start the season. Now, you know, it's only 5 games, so it's a very small sample size. But there was a 4-game streak, and there's 5 power play goals, you know, so if you averages would say that, you know, the team can average a power play goal a game. However, we know that there's a shutout there, so that's not necessarily the truth. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I do want to see more of Matvei and his scoring. I want to see it happen in even strength, because I think he's one of probably a handful of forwards who you would normally be surprised by to see that they don't have an even strength point. Part of that is a lack of time on even strength of even strength hockey in general, and, you know, especially in the first 4 games, and then you had the shutout. But at the end of the day here, you do want to see that element of the game kind of come to the surface. Tonight, you know, the highlight, as we put in the graphic here, is Matvei Michkov, and you got Alexander Ovechkin. So you would like to see Matvei kind of get his first even strength goal and kind of develop that, or at least show that extra step at the NHL level. But if he does just put a power play goal in the back of the net again, I mean, a goal's the goal, so no one's going to sit there and complain about it. However, I do want to sit there and note real quick about Drysdale. Drysdale is, and by the way, we'll get to Sealer in a second.
Well, actually, hold on. Before you move on to Drysdale, to your point about Michkov needing 5-on-5 points, Connor Bedard last year, 61 points, 21 power play points. He still had to score 40 points at even strength. So you are dead on accurate right there in saying that you're going to need something from Matvei Michkov at 5-on-5, but it's also not unexpected. That's why Keith Jones and Danny Briere all summer long was like, hey, he's 19, pump the brakes. Don't think this kid's going to walk in and score, 30 in the first month. It's not going to happen. And now you're seeing the effects of that, of what it is to step into the National Hockey League in the first 5 games and try to get your feet under you. Having said that, floor is yours for Jamie Drysdale.
And also in regards to Michkov, I will say that I set lofty expectations, outright, but I don't necessarily think it's going to happen. It's not a slight at him. It's a rookie year in the NHL, and I happen to think in the NHL, amongst sports in general, is probably one of the hardest leagues you can play in because the parity is real amongst every team. But about Drysdale, real quick, just before we move forward, I like how he's answered a lot of the challenges that Tortorella's thrown his way. Speaking of the power play, Tortorella said that Drysdale, he wants to see Drysdale shoot the puck more often. He doesn't want to see him pass it off because the more smarter teams, the more intelligent teams are going to be very keen to the Flyers working the puck through to the forwards, such as Michkov, such as Tippett, such as Konechny, such as Frost even. And then the same night that he is challenged to do so, he puts a power play goal in the back of the net against Seattle. Also, there was a bad pinch that he had, and on the defensive aspect of things, I thought that he made a decent enough of an adjustment at home against Vancouver. I would like to see him step in front of the blue line a little bit more, so you're not kind of flirting with that offsides. But he was prepared in case, it goes down, to get back on that defensive transition. So he's clearly listening, and Tortorella, I think, is having or will at least have the same sort of effect on Drysdale as, dare I say, a Ristolainen. Ristolainen, he played almost a decade in the NHL before he became a Flyer. And then underneath Tortorella, he's now starting to get his defensive bearings. Maybe that's just a project that has to happen through Tortorella and the coaching staff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is something that they're working on. And I have the luxury, I live about 20 minutes away from Flyers Training Center. So I'm able to go down to practice fairly often. And just about every single day, there are players working on those front of the net tips. It's funny, HC drops in the comment that Johnson's cooked today. And I actually had a lot of fun. There were only a couple of players on the ice this morning that it basically was the scratch unit. And Johnson works really, really hard in practice, which, I mean, hey, for the salary, I would hope so. But having said that, it was really fun to watch him as a veteran. They were doing a drill in front of Fedotov in regards to trying to screen him, trying to get a stick on the puck, get deflections, stuff of that nature. And just in the middle of the training session, it was only him, Brink, and Forster. Johnson skates over, grabs Luchenko, and just starts showing him different mannerisms, way to get your body in front of the goaltender, way to get yourself into position to correctly deflect the puck and stuff like that, and then goes back to the blue line to continue doing his thing. So I don't think they're hoping to rely on Erik Johnson for more than maybe 15, 20 games this season. I think that if they're using him more than that, that's more than they would like. As somebody that's essentially kind of like a quote-unquote Jackie Moon player coach, that's a great role for him, where he can use his veteran skills to then help improve the team around him, which, after being stuck in Buffalo for a ton of years, getting a chance to go to Colorado and see a winning environment, he has a lot of things from NHL locker rooms that he can share from over the years.
Yeah, and I don't I agree with you 100% that you're probably going to see a minimal amount of games from a guy like an Erik Johnson. If he does come into the lineup, it'll probably be to alleviate a symbol, or obviously if there's any injuries, let's knock on wood, that he's still a steady hand. He's still a steady veteran that could be called up in a limited minutes, and that's where you want to see him. I think I think a lot of people and Johnson himself, said that he wasn't really, helping out Drysdale in the ways that he thought he thought he could. He wasn't doing a good enough of a job. I think that some of that has to do with him being on his second pair instead of on the bottom pair. You're asking him to do a lot more. You're asking him to fill in Sealer's role, and that's just not it for him. Ideally, you do want you do want a different defenseman to be in that top four. So if he's going to be a seventh defenseman cycling for the bottom, I don't think that he's that bad of a option as a veteran defenseman. Frankly, compared to last year, I would rather have an Eric Johnson versus a Mark Stahl.
Yeah, no, I think that's attitude wise, and that's no slight in any way to Mark Stahl. I didn't really get to interact with him, but not that I've gotten a ton of interaction with Eric Johnson, but everything I've heard from Johnson, um, I've liked. I've liked the veteran mentality. I like his willingness to just cool. Coaches need me to do X, Y, or Z. X, Y, Z is done. So I think that's good. We got a little sidetracked here. So Edmonton 4-3 loss. Leon Draisaitl scored in overtime, 56 seconds in. McDavid had 2 assists. I don't want to just gloss right by this because I think it's noteworthy of talking. Jet Luchenko took on Connor McDavid, 17 minutes of ice time. Yes, Connor McDavid, the best player in the world, had 2 assists. Did not score. Hasn't scored much at all this year. Having said that, 18-year-old rookie center. I'd say that's a hell of a performance from Jet Luchenko.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's one of the things where if he does get sent to juniors after the 9-game stint, he has that to kind of, the feather in the cap where he was playing, matched up against, like you said, one of the best players, if not the best forward in the NHL. And he mitigated and to the best of his efforts as a true rookie to no goals, 2 assists. And at the end of the day, one comes in in overtime when he's not on the ice. Mm-hmm. Like that's an assist from McDavid. Now
and with the game on the line, Philly was leading by 1 with under 10 to go, and Luchenko and Michkov both still out there on the ice from Tortorella. So high praise there from the coach to get his young stars out against some of the best players in the world in a very critical spot.
What I will do though is harp on that with 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes left in that game. The Flyers and the need to close out opponents when they have the opportunity. Yeah. Look, I think Sanheim in the home game was a lot better. He joined the rush and he looked more engaged. But I do think, and this is going to sound harsh, but some of that towards the end there in Edmonton, you can kind of look at Sanheim in this position and be like, boy, if he was just positioned even slightly okay, that probably doesn't happen the way that it goes down. So it's very harsh to kind of put that on on one person. But when you look at the replay, it's just like, man, there was no accountability for that game tying goal. And unfortunately, I thought that it was a trip on Sanheim. Mm-hmm. Apparently, I don't know what a trip is because, a lot of people disagreed and Tortorella also disagreed himself. So it's not a trip, whatever. I take the L on that, but so did the Flyers. And that it was a tough one to watch because you knew it should have probably been 2 points when you kind of walk away to lose a point after that.
It's like a completed catch in the NFL.
Yeah, who knows what it is anymore?
Take a guess. It might be a trip. It might not be a trip. I don't know. So we move along from getting a point out in Edmonton, feeling still pretty good, to Thursday night in Seattle. It started off pretty well. Before we get to that, let's get to our predictions. I had a 4-2 Seattle win with a Kraken empty net goal. It was a little worse than that. Eric Reese had a win, 2-1 Philly dogfight in a tough defensive battle, which realistically for a lot of the game it wasn't a low scoring game. But for the first, I'd say 35 minutes or so of the game, it was a competitive fight between Seattle and the Philadelphia Flyers. Scott Lawton scored 2 goals in the first period. Jared McCann had a goal on the power play. And then Unfortunately, Ivan Fedotov just crumbled. 3 goals in 3 minutes, a 5-2 Seattle lead. Tolvanen, Eberle, Shane Wright. Shane Wright scored 8 seconds after Jordan Eberle's goal. That just simply can't happen. It's going to deflate your whole team, and honestly, it's going to kill your goalie's confidence in and of himself, because he's already. It's kind of that goldfish memory, that you like goalies to have, where it's like, cool, that happened 5 seconds ago. I don't even remember it. So 8 seconds later, that's rough. So unfortunately, it ends up 6-4 Flyers loss. Flyers did get a couple of goals from York and the Drysdale power play goal that you did mention. So let's kind of dive into this game a little bit here. Let's start with the good. Scotty Lawton, that first period.
Scott Lawton, actually the whole fourth line. Scott Lawton, really what it was at the times, Lawton, Paling, and Hathaway, to that point, were the best. I think that's the best 5-on-5 line the Flyers have. I think.
And it was that way last year, too.
Yeah, I mean,
at times.
And people will say, you can probably look at metrics and you can probably sit there and skew it where it's like, limited minutes, blah, blah, blah. Well, hey, limited minutes in production. That's what I say. At 5-on-5, there's more production from the fourth line than there is from the top 6. And that's what I saw in that game. So hats off to Lawton. Lawton had a snipe. It was
oh yeah.
He went top shelf, but near side. It was just disgusting to see that shot. So I love when I see people say like, oh, like Lawton's cooked. Why is he blah blah blah? Why is he in the top 6? I'm just like, because he does that. Like Lawton's not cooked. Like Lawton, by the way, is just waiting. That's all it is. But
so here's
I will say
question.
This. Go ahead.
I have a question. Well, go ahead. You can say what you need to say, but I have a question for you.
I was gonna say, and I was gonna just kind of dive into the Fedotov. Watching him in goal has not looked comfortable at any point, and geez, what was it? Probably 3 of the 5 goals that he let in. I do believe it's 5 hole, like all day long. I don't know what it is with his stance. Maybe he's trying to look above instead of around, and he's not getting low enough. And perhaps that's what's going on. But also, I will say this: what was one thing when Carter Hart was here that you really hated about his game? Do you remember? Does anything stick out like a sore thumb? Because it does to me, and I see it exactly with Fedotov too.
The first thing that comes to mind is rebound control, but I don't know exactly.
It's exactly it. It's exactly it. Exactly it. The rebound control. I think he's trying to get his body and play with his body a lot in front of shots, and the rebounds are just juicy. There was 2 goals after that I felt the defense didn't really do him any favors, but 3 of those 5 goals I think were weak goals.
Let's put it this way, though. Imagine that you spent your whole life working in a diner, right? And then all of a sudden that diner goes away. You have to go to a new country, and now you're working at a brewery. All right, completely different. Still both in food, but completely different thing. That's KHL to the NHL. It's the same game, but the dimensions are completely different. Whether it's the angles, the size of the ice, different, even just the routes that players take and the congestion that you get in the NHL game. He has to learn all of that. And I think that's one of the main reasons, not to pivot, why they want Kolosov here. Because Kolosov can get that experience in the AHL, even if he doesn't want to be there. He's at least playing in that North American style rink. And I think that's a portion of the growing pains you're seeing out of Fedotov.
No, and I would absolutely agree with that. I do think that has to be tempered a little bit because he did have a full training camp. He did have a full preseason of, when he was getting his opportunity to be on the ice, when he was scheduled to be on the ice.
He's played 10 games, maybe 10
NHL games. That's absolutely fair. But I do think that some of these things is just using your height in a way where you're not supposed to use it as a goaltender finally caught up with them, I think. That's really what I think it is.
end of the day, a 0.792 save percentage also isn't going to get
Yeah.
it done. So I can defend him all I want, but honestly, if you're stopping 80% of the pucks coming your way, you're not going to last very long in the NHL. That's just a fact of life.
I'm pretty sure it was in the first 5 games here. There was 10 goals allowed in 5 periods by Fedotov, and then there was 10 goals allowed by Urson in general. So that's the difference here. Urson's taken on a lot more, a lot more shot attempts as well. Remember, he came in that game and took over in that third period. Almost saw the comeback kids make a comeback. So, you kind of go back, and I hate to be this guy because, you're playing the what if game, but God, two of those goals go 5-hole from about, a different area code.
Yeah.
Maybe you do go to overtime. Maybe you sneak out a win that you probably don't necessarily deserve. But at the end of the day, it's like you got to save the ones that are quote unquote easy if you're an NHL goaltender. And he's struggling. So I don't know. My question to you would be, what is his leash if you want to play that game? And is Kolosov a guy that, could be called up sooner rather than later?
I think it's not going to be anywhere near as quick as Flyers fans want. I think you need at least 10 games for Kolosov, another 10, personally. Hopefully not at the frequency at which we've seen, which unfortunately I really think the true thing that's going to help Fedotov is NHL games. Really, there's no replication for that. You can do as much as you want in practice, but really getting that game experience. But right now the schedule has also kind of dictated Tortorella's hand a little bit, and it's like you can't play Urson 4 out of those first 5 games. We saw kind of how that goes towards the end of last season. So I still think they give him to the new year. Personally,
Okay, so that's fair.
I could see January. I could see at that point, depending where the Flyers are, either they're looking at bringing somebody else in that might be available via trade or waivers or something of that nature. If they need to, I think they'll bring up Kolosov. But I mean, realistically, I think the best thing for Alexei Kolosov is to stay down in Lehigh Valley, get as much playing time as he can, and then come in and just dominate camp with your athleticism next year. That would be my personal, like, here, you want to make the Flyers, Alexei? Here's what you do. You go absolutely slay Lehigh Valley, and then, you know what, next year, it's an open game.
There was a game relatively recently against Wilkes-Barre, just granting the baby Pens, where he did allow 4 goals in the first period, and then he cleaned up for the second and third. So
you want to see.
Yes, it's a bad start, but at the end of the day, how you recover from that start, that's what I want to see too. So, if it's going to be ugly at first, if you can fix it, all right, so you restore a little bit of faith. There was another point. We'll get back to it at a different time. It's kind of escaped me real quick.
That's fine. Well, it'll give us a chance to run through the 3-0 home loss in the home opener against Vancouver. We were both incorrect there. You were a little closer than I was, just the wrong side of the scoreboard.
Yeah, I mean, let's just not predict, shootouts pretty much ever again, right? Or not shootouts, shutouts ever again. So let's. So
I had Philly 5-3. Philly 5-3. Forrester had 2 goals instead. He gets scratched the next game. So
Oh, I guess we were really off of both of us.
And then Eric Reese had a shutout, but unfortunately, it was Vancouver that got the shutout. A late first period goal by Niels Hoglander. And then again, just in this one, it wasn't exactly on Urson, but 2 goals again in under a minute. Brock Besser and then Kiefer Sherwood, 3-0 Vancouver, and the Flyers just weren't able to get any offense against Lankinen, who has really balled out in the first 2 games against him.
Yeah, Lankinen's been in his bag, and Vancouver was definitely in their bag that game. Anytime you see a goal scored immediately off of a face-off like what Sherwood did, you kind of have to tip your cap to your opponent and go, man, like, they have our number tonight. It's kind of their night. doesn't mean that, and now in that terminology, that's not necessarily saying, like it's their night, like you give up, but it's definitely, it's tough sledding. That's a hard game right there. Yeah. By the way, Philadelphia rang the puck off the post a few times. Tippett looked a lot sharper. He wasn't trying to be as fine. Unfortunately, none of it ended up, appearing on the scoreboard there. But at the end of the day, which I thought that was a little bit odd, seeing the 3 stars of the game and Sanheim being the 3rd star. But nonetheless, Sanheim actually did have a very solid game, I thought, as a as a defender, and especially when you get to see the most 5-on-5 action from the Flyers out of the first 5 games. It was nice to see Sanheim and even York kind of have
22 minutes of ice time.
Yes.
22 minutes of ice time. And honestly, I even put here as a notable performance, and I definitely don't mean it as a slight. Zamula was only a -1. And based off of the early couple of games, -1 for Zamula was an improvement. So I wasn't
Zamula...
exactly, and 21 minutes of ice time too. It's not like he played 12 minutes. 21 minutes of ice time is solid ice time for Zamula.
I think Zamula should earn a little bit more the flowers than what he's been getting. I think a lot of people have been very critical because and that kind of goes back to last season where it's just kind of continued. Look, it's a new year. He's going to have his ups and downs. He's a third pair defenseman. And look, there's been times where he's helped set up scoring plays. He did so on, I believe it was a power play earlier in that road trip. I'm not going to go back and actually search, but if it wasn't a power play, then it was actually a nice neutral zone setup. It was a second assist, second apple. So there's times where you do see his dip in performance, but there's also other times where like no one's really given the flowers when he does the good things either. And I'm guilty of that because look, there's been games for Ristolainen, by the way, in this road trip. Or these first 5 games, Ristolainen has had games where he was probably one of the better 5-on-5 defensemen. Overall, I think in all situations, including the power play, I think Zamula has been a pretty stellar defenseman. But, and this is, dare I say, Drysdale, I thought was my hallmark as far as defenseman in the first 5 games. I know there's been a lot of improvements that need to be made, but the way that he's been kind of answering the call for Tortorella has opened my eyes.
There you go. No arguments there. Welcome in everybody new that's joined us since we started half an hour ago. My name's Chris Babos with Philly Sports Network. Eric Reese, Flyers Nation. We got about half an hour until some Flyers and Capitals hockey. Some of you may also know me from Total Apex Sports. I do a Capitals beat for there as Alex Ovechkin chases down NHL history. I'm honored to have the opportunity with them to write about one of the best goal scorers in the world. And yesterday, this wasn't even on the schedule here, but yesterday I had the opportunity. The Capitals the Capitals practiced at Flyers Training Center. There were maybe 15 people. Maybe 20 in Flyers Training Center on the second rink. And you've got the best goal scorer in the hockey world just twirling about on the ice. I as somebody that writes and speaks for a living, I always usually have words. I was absolutely speechless that Alex Ovechkin was like 10 feet in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to be marveled by somebody who's, making a point to be, or making a case to be the best, or one of the best goal scorers, if not one of the best pure goal scorers, I think, since what, Gretzky?
He's 40 goals away. He has 1 goal this season, and we'll get to this when we get to the Caps overview. He's got 1 goal this season, but he's 40 away from tying and 41 away from eclipsing the regular season goal scoring record. So if he doesn't get it this year, he should have an opportunity if he comes back to play at 40, which I can't imagine he wouldn't. He still averages 25 to 30 goals a year. So
he'll be hitting that Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers age, before you know it. So I mean, do you think he does it this year though? If you had to kind of pick,
I don't. I think he gets in the neighborhood of 30 to 35. Honestly, with the power play and the way hockey goes, I could see him getting some kind of stupid hot streak, like 12 goals in 10 games, and then all of a sudden you look at up in like February and he's sitting on 28, and then you're like, okay, well, can he get 12? So I think he's going to need to catch a hot streak to do it, but
How
I
how
think
many
it's
of
more
those
so next
goals?
year.
How many of those goals though? Because like as you see this in sports, right? Like as a player gets close to a record, like a season record. I think we saw it with Michael Strahan, right, when he was doing the sack record, and like the last sack he did on Favre was kind of
Mhm.
Favre just keeling over a little bit for him. Not this necessarily give him these opportunities, but let's say this, right? He gets
I know where you're
within
going with. I know
15.
where you're going with this.
He gets within 15. He gets within 10. How many times is there going to be an opportunity where he is on the ice or there's a placement to put him on the ice for the empty net goal? And they're like, Alex, just do it. Just do it.
I mean, they could, as long as it's not the last one, I think he's all for it.
So,
Uh, I thought where you were gonna go is there a goalie that's like,
no,
oh, I
just get out of
gave
the
up
way.
like this, and I was like, yo, goalies are insane. No disrespect, goalies. My brother's one. We love you, but y'all are insane. You have rubber shot at your face, even if you have pads. So yeah, no, I can't see a goalie just being like, I'll just let him score past
No.
me. No, they usually are like, I don't want that puck on my side of the ice, let alone in my net. So honestly, I think we've covered our defensive concerns fairly well in the first 37 minutes here. We covered Fedotov, we covered Urson. The only thing we haven't exactly covered is Nick Sealer and the impact of his injury. We touched on it HC much earlier. Throw in that chat in. We can throw it back up here, and that he will or should help Drysdale a lot. He should also help the penalty kill, which it obviously isn't a problem. But anytime you can beef up the penalty kill a little bit, it's a good thing. So the one thing I will say before I pass the baton over to you that I didn't realize when I was doing my research, Nick Sealer all time 300 almost 300 NHL games. He's a +9. That's a big loss to a defense that's trying to get their footing at 5-on-5.
One of the things that marvels me about Nick Sealer, if I can talk good about Chuck Fletcher one time and then get immediately off the subject, is is like he was out of hockey, man. And Chuck Fletcher having, Sealer used to be a Minnesota Wild defenseman. We've seen this before with a guy like a Nate Prosser. When Nate Prosser was, called in to the Flyers and he got some playing time underneath the Fletcher umbrella. Fletcher calls in Sealer, who was out of the league, comes in, and not only is he just, tenacious because he's out there. One of my first things when I saw Sealer on the ice was out there, and I think he fought Alexiak on the Kraken, and he just had that blood coming down his face. I'm like, that's a Flyer. Like in the same way that you would say like Nick Delorier also in the lineup tonight is a Flyer. But the difference there is Sealer turned into a guy who was out of the game, who was kind of dispatched in or recalled in for probably a better term there by Fletcher into the Flyers lineup or roster. And then he turns into a absolutely credible across the board NHL top 4 defenseman. That just goes into the work ethic of like who Sealer is, and honestly, it might have to do with he's the perfect defenseman for John Tortorella. Please get into the shooting lane and block a shot system. So yeah, absolutely is he going to help the penalty kill? Absolutely is he going to help Drysdale with some of the defensive stuff because it's going to open up Drysdale to be a little bit more aggressive with the puck. But I will say this: if Fedotov, and we go back to this, can kind of figure out how to navigate shots that are coming through traffic, Sealer is very good at blocking those shots and kind of mitigating the pucks that are being on the net. So he will probably help out the goaltending as effectively.
I would agree with that, and for a goalie that is struggling, that you get that one, maybe two shot blocks that change that scoreboard because they don't slip past the goaltender makes a massive difference in the game. So 20 minutes to go. Flyers hosting the Washington Capitals, Wells Fargo Center, South Philadelphia. I'm ready for some hockey. I don't know how all of you guys out there. 6 o'clock hockey is a little weird. I will say that.
Weird.
6
Why
p.m.
can't it be
hockey.
7?
Well, it can't be 7 because one of the coolest things the NHL can do, but they decided to do it on a Tuesday, is the Frozen Frenzy. All 32 NHL teams are in action tonight, which is incredible. Every 15 minutes, a new game's going to start. I don't know how they don't have red zone-ish something for Flyers. I know probably there was something with Amazon Prime where it had been discussed. I don't know if it's actually available or anything like that, but it's one of those things that I love the idea. It needs to be a Saturday. It really needs to be a Saturday or a Sunday where literally people aren't, who's, at least on the East Coast anyway, who's staying up past 11 o'clock to watch Utah drop the puck. Generally speaking, people are going to go to bed because they've got work on Wednesday morning.
I was going to raise my hand, and I just kind of did this. You know what, though? I probably will be up because I'll be writing the post game, so I might as well just turn on Utah and see what about it. But you know, they're talking about how Utah has a very, very, very rambunctious crowd out there, and yeah, I think when you have a new franchise and a new market, I think we kind of saw this with Vegas. I think the expansion teams we saw.
Okay, no disrespect to Utah. I didn't mean to disrespect Utah.
But
I think from the West Coast standpoint, it starts too late for East Coasters to enjoy something.
Well, I mean, if you're into hockey and you want to see something different and it's being highlighted, I think you go out of your way to watch it. I mean, maybe not the whole game. Granted, life is life, but at the same time, there is a little bit to this. Like, all 32 teams are playing tonight, as you were saying. Flyers kick it all off with the Capitals, but it's kind of hard to expand the game in the sense where like everything is just kind of collapsing, colliding on top of each other. I don't necessarily understand that, and maybe that's just everybody else understands it and I don't, and that's probably true. But I just kind of think that there's like, it's almost like an option paralysis. It's like you're not growing the game if I'm still only watching one game and everything else starting within 15 minutes, because at the end of the day here, after I'm done watching the Flyers game, if I do want to watch, something else, there's probably only 2 or 3 games that I can even get my hands on if I want to see it in its entirety. So it's a lot. It's a little bit hard to say 19
different networks as well.
Right. But to your point, if they did a kind of red zone for the NHL where you can have like, a split screen, there's 4 games going on, it would probably be hard to see because the screens are like mini and it's, a little bit harder to keep up with a fast paced game versus football. But, you do have your eye and you do have your attention and you do kind of know what's going on, at least in a loose term of, 8 teams instead of just, 4 or 2.
I will say it's going to be a banging highlight package on the NHL
yes, it will.
Network with 16 games. I think it's going to be. So sometimes they're like, here's like 4 highlights and a bunch of talk. No, it's going to be all highlights tonight.
No, they're going
all of the games.
NHL's YouTube will be on fire by midnight. So
yeah, that tracks. So getting into the contest tonight, puck drops at 6 o'clock in South Philadelphia, Flyers Capitals. We already touched a little bit on Alex Ovechkin, 74 games against the Flyers, 49 goals, 31 assists, 80 points. However, I like this one. He's a -2 all time against the Philadelphia Flyers in those 74 games. So if you have a chance to score, you might need to do it when Ovi's on the ice against the Capitals right
I look at
Potentially.
I
Anyway.
look at the rest of the body of work there, and I'm thinking that, man, I don't think it matters too much. I expect Ovechkin to have one or two tonight, honestly, and it's not a slight.
Yeah, he should.
It's not a slight on goaltending. It's it's just Ovechkin's Ovechkin, and he's going to be
The
in his
one,
office, and he's going to be serving up rubber from the office.
the
I
other
hope to
one that
see.
scares me. Sorry, God.
I was going to say I hope to see Michkov at least match the energy as well.
There you go. The other one that's extremely scary right now, Tom Wilson. Prototypical player I would have loved as a Flyer. I know it's not going to happen at this point, but man, had he been in a Flyer jersey, he's one of those guys that just this city would have absolutely gone bonkers for. Tom Wilson's 5 goals in 4 games, sitting at the top of the NHL scoring leaderboard at the moment. He scored in every game. He had 2 goals on Saturday against New Jersey, including the game winner in overtime. And he really, I've watched a lot of the Capitals games early season. He's just been a force to reckon with. A lot of pucks on net, a lot of pucks finding the twine behind the goalie, and the Caps have the exact opposite season that the Flyers have had. The Flyers won their first game, lost the next 4. Well, the Caps lost their home opener and then won the next 3. So you got 2 teams moving in separate directions. So it's going to be a big test for the Philadelphia Flyers to slow down what at this point is a red hot Washington Capital team after 3 wins.
Yeah, the Capitals have had pretty in 4 games they've won against the Devils twice, Vegas, and the Stars. That's good company. That's very tough opponents. And the Flyers, they've had they're a good opponents. We went over this already. Vancouver twice, Edmonton, Calgary, and Seattle. At the end of the day here, the Capitals are playing up to their opponents, and the Flyers they're underachieving. So yeah, it's an important game because it's your first Metropolitan Division opponent of the year, and it's going to speak loudly about your placement in the standings. And at the end of the day here, with the Capitals, the Flyers are not only the underdog, they're heavy underdogs.
Mm-hmm.
They're huge underdogs, and it has everything to do with the ebbs and flow of the season up to date so far.
Also, the simple fact that the Flyers are allowing 4.2 goals a game. The Capitals are scoring 4 goals a game, which is a recipe for Philadelphia needing to score at least 3 or 4 goals tonight. And with the way that the offense has been moving in Philadelphia, that might be a tall task to accomplish against the Washington team that's been playing strong. So that's tonight. That starts in about 12 minutes. We'll be off the air before the Flyers and the Capitals drop the puck. 2 other games this weekend: Minnesota Wild 1:00 afternoon game. What are your feelings on that one? The Flyers just never play well on Saturday afternoon in South Philly.
I mean, how could you? I 1:00 games. That's for the birds, man. No, like literally, like for the
Birds.
like yeah, I don't know. Like I just never liked the matinee hockey. Never really got into it, even as a fan, but like more so as a you kind of do it. You kind of pull the strings and you try to get everything done the night before as a writer. But it's because your whole day is completely disjointed. I imagine it's tenfold as a player. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't like it. I don't like this week's outlook for the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's hard to say because then you'll be 9 games deep after Sunday. So
yeah, and Sunday is a road game in Montreal against the Montreal Canadiens, which they have a little bit of beef with a Matvei Michkov entirely on their side. I think they're the only ones that know that they're having a fight, but Montreal Canadian fans and the fact that they did not draft Matvei Michkov and the fact that he's here now in the NHL, a little bit of a bugaboo. So that should be very interesting come on Sunday night. That's a 7:00 game in Montreal. So before we get out of here, let's get some predictions, Eric. Let's start with tonight, South Philadelphia Flyers and Capitals. I think it's going to be a tough one. I think it's going to be a loss in Philly, but I think it's going to be close. Washington's been red hot, scoring 4 goals a game. I think they're going to hit that. I think it's going to be a 4-2 loss for Philadelphia.
I was going to say the
And
exact same thing.
I think Ovechkin gets at least one today as well.
I was going to say the exact same thing, honestly. 4-2 win tonight for Washington. I don't think that's, especially in a home and home, because, I hate to say it so negatively, but Fedotov will probably start tomorrow. So I
Probably.
do see probably more of a growth in that lead. So maybe a 5-2, or maybe it's still a 2-goal loss. Maybe it's 5-3, but I do see the Capitals kind of putting in their offensive work on the Flyers. You hope not. You hope that the underdog can overachieve, just kind of how the the Capitals, for that matter, have been playing up against their opponents. You do want to see that from the Flyers clearly, because they've underachieved against a collection of teams that are just a little bit over 500 right now in terms of their points per win in the games played.
So we got a 4-2 loss tonight for both of us. No shutouts. Do you have a prediction for goal scorer or significant event in the game?
Konechny scores a even strength goal, and we do see a Michkov power play goal. I don't know that he gets the even strength point quite yet.
Okay. So we got a Michkov power play goal and a TK goal. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go with Ovechkin. I don't think Tom Wilson is going to go 5 for 5, although that would be pretty cool to see from their side of things anyway. Just because that's pretty rare air there, 5 straight games with a goal. So and that's to open the season nonetheless.
You got your feet in both ponds, so I hear you.
I do. Well, I think going to Washington tomorrow, you had 5-3 loss for Philadelphia because mostly Fedotov, and it sounds like I actually think the Flyers are going to pick their goalie up. I have a 3-2 overtime win for Philadelphia. Wow. I think that Fedotov actually comes out, plays a solid game. I don't think he's going to be a world beater, but I think it's enough to get the job done. Give the team a little more confidence in his starts, which is going to be important. And I think there's the advantage of maybe having the Washington Capitals a little tired in that second game of the back-to-back that might just slow down play a little bit so that Fedotov has that extra quarter of a second to process what's going on.
What I would like to see tonight, though, is Washington busy. Not necessarily overly busy, but just enough to, not so it's not, Urson probably getting 5 shots against in one period. You kind of want that steady flow so the goaltender doesn't really lose their game flow as well. And I will say the same thing for tomorrow, to your point as well, because I think that's probably be the best case scenario for Fedotov.
Yeah, the game up in Newark between the Devils and the Washington Capitals over the weekend was wild. 6-5 in overtime. I think there were 2 different periods in which there were goals within under a minute. So the Capitals are playing some fast hockey, and it's really going to be up to the Flyers to really match that at this point, at least until we get into those tired leg points, 40 minutes, 50 minutes into the game. And then obviously tomorrow is going to be a heavy leg day, just outright from having travel, having, played back-to-back nights like that. So it's going to be an interesting test for the Flyers over the next 48 hours for sure. Moving to Saturday, we've got Minnesota at home, 1:00 afternoon. It's almost Halloween. I have spoopy vibes about that one. So Flyers coming off a 3-2 win.
I'm going 3-2. I'm going 3-2 Flyers against the Wild on the matinee game that's ugly as hell.
I was just about to say, you know what? Coming off of a win, I can't do it. Yeah, I like the 3-2 score. I don't think they beat the Wild. Wild are undefeated thus far this season. Not that means anything. It's 5 games. They have been playing strong in the Western Conference. So I'm going to go 3-2 loss, and then you have a 3-2 Flyers victory. What do you got for Sunday, pal?
Sunday, man, more than anything, I'm going to put this out there real quick, just into the universe. More than anything, I would like to just, the Canadians' sweet tears of Matvei just going off, whether it's a power play goal and an even strength goal. Please just let him have it. That being said, I think Matvei wills the team to a victory, and it's a 4-1 Flyers win.
4-1 Flyers, and I have 4-2 Flyers. It's not going to happen. I will say this right now. If it happens, you will see this clip for the next year. Matvei Michkov, Patrick in Montreal.
Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. If you keep this on the loop, if it happens, but we are also for you saying that's not going to happen, we're also saying this week that there should be a complete rebound, almost a complete 180 for Fedotov in the net. So we're talking crazy. We're talking wild, even before Minnesota.
Yeah, well, we've suffered through not having the playoffs in South Philadelphia since 2020, and even those playoffs were in a bubble. So yeah, we are a little wild. We are a little crazy, and you know what? We're okay with that. We're Philadelphia. That's just how we roll.
That's how it goes.
How we roll. All right, we got a couple minutes till puck drop, so let's let you guys go. Enjoy the hockey game. Let's go Flyers. I'm Christopher Babos. Find me on Philly Sports Network and Total Apex Sports. We got Eric Reese with Flyers Nation. I hope you all have a great game. Let's go Flyers and enjoy the first ever battle between Matvei Michkov and Alex Ovechkin. Have a great night, y'all.
Take care.